Thanks for you all for joining us this morning. Thank you all for being here. First, before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank the Coalition for TJ, a nonprofit led by a group of remarkable parents that have been an outspoken defender of meritocracy and, most importantly, common sense. I know Asra Nomani is here. I want to personally thank her as well. As I told this group of parents prior to this start, I wanted to thank them for doing the right thing. It's never too late to do the right thing, but doing the right thing is not always the easy thing. I want to thank them for being outspoken and getting back to meritocracy and common sense. 2 years ago, I stood here at the Korean Community Center and announced a civil rights investigation into Fairfax County Public Schools, and I promised Virginians I would come back with answers. Today, we have those answers. Promises made, promises kept. Earlier today, the Office of the Attorney General notified Fairfax County Public Schools that they are in violation of the Virginia Human Rights Act and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by discriminating against Asian American students in the admissions process at the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, commonly known as TJ. Let me be clear. Discrimination is wrong. And when that discrimination comes from those entrusted to educate our children and uphold the law, it is especially troubling. In 2020, Fairfax County School Board overhauled TJ's admissions policy. Their stated goal was to rebalance the racial makeup of the student body so they would, quote, better represent the demographics of Northern Virginia. Our investigation, the Attorney General's office, began in January of 2023 after reports emerged that the Fairfax County School Board had actually changed TJ's admissions policy with the specific purpose of diminishing the number of Asian American students. Let's be clear. Thomas Jefferson High School was already, at that time, a minority-majority high school, but they determined it was the wrong minorities. Their intentions, it was not an accident. It was not an unintended consequences of this change. They said what they wanted to do, and they did precisely that. One school board member even said they wanted to move towards equity and away from equality. And to do this, the board abandoned a race-neutral, merit-based system that previously was in place, and they adopted a policy structure specifically designed to reduce the number of Asian American students. The old system was simple. If you had the test scores and you had the grades, you could go to TJ. Instead, they adapted this equity-based system to diminish Asian American students, and that is exactly what happened. Let me repeat that. Public officials entrusted with educating our children knowingly and deliberately used race as a factor in a public school's admissions process. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a clear violation of civil rights laws, both at the federal and state level. For 5 consecutive years prior to the change, Asian American students consistently made up over 65% of the admitted class, including roughly 73% of the class the year before the admissions policy shift. After the admissions policy change, that number dropped 19 percentage points, close to 20 points in a single year, from 73% to 54%. Indeed, despite the school actually expanding its incoming class by 64 seats, Asian American students received 56 fewer offers of admissions. That was not a coincidence. That was absolutely the intended outcome. This was not about expanding opportunity. It was about excluding and eliminating based on race. It is the opposite of Dr. King's vision of a colorblind society in which you're willing to judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. The school board removed standardized testing and replaced it with a so-called holistic review, evaluating students on GPA, essays, and quote-unquote experience factors such as socioeconomic background, English proficiency, disability status, and whether the student attended a so-called underrepresented middle school. What's important is to understand how these new rules were structured. The new policy guaranteed each participating public middle school a number of seats equivalent to 1.5% of that school's 8th grade class. Those slots are offered to the highest evaluated applicants from each middle school. These seats are awarded based on where the student attends middle school, rather than on the school zone in which the student resides. What does this mean? It meant students from some of the highest achieving schools had to compete against the other highest achieving students within their schools, as opposed to the students in their zoned middle school area. After the top 1.5% had been selected from each school, 100 remaining slots were attended to the highest evaluated remaining students from across the district. So even though Fairfax increased the number of seats available at TJ by 64, they extended 56 fewer offers to Asian American students for the class of 2025, precisely because of those so-called experience factors, another intended outcome. How do we know this was intended? Because of the internal emails and text messages among the school board members themselves confirmed they knew exactly what they were doing. One school member described the new admissions plan as having, quote, an anti-Asian feel. Quote, there has been an anti-Asian feel underlying some of this. Hate to say it, laugh out loud. Another school board member admitted the changes would, quote, kick out Asians, end quote. Still another said the superintendent, quote, came right out of the gate blaming Asian students. And one text message among the school board members said, quote, Asians hate us. Now, my friends in the media, imagine if every one of the text messages I just described replaced the word Asian with Latino. What would be your reaction? What should be our reaction as Virginians? I am outraged. Let me sink that in. These are not words of fringe actors. These are not people just mouthing off on the internet. These are the words of the decision makers inside our public education system that's supposed to represent all of us. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and yet they did it anyway. In addition, the process to push through this policy was deeply flawed, characterized by last-minute changes, limited public input, and a lack of transparency. One board member even admitted it was, quote, the messiest execution, end quote, she had seen in nearly a decade. And then, as if to institutionalize this discriminatory framework, Fairfax County Public Schools hired an equity consultant from California and paid this person $455,000 of taxpayer money for just 9 months of work. And this consultant promoted a, quote, new equity-based standard at the school. They supported, quote, to treat some students purposefully and equal in strategies to ensure equal outcomes for every student without exception. Do we want to live in America where school districts are adopting a framework of treating some students, quote unquote, purposefully unequal? That is not the America I want to live in. Equal opportunity obviously does not mean equal outcome. Equity is not a license to discriminate. Equity without excellence is emptiness. And we've seen the fruits of this equity-based standards. Thomas Jefferson High School was consistently rated by U.S. News and World Report as the #1 public high school in the entire country. What have we seen as a result? It was #1 in 2020. It was #1 in 2021. It was #1 in 2022, and now it's dropping. It dropped to #5 in 2023, and now it's dropped further again to #14 in 2024. I know as a child of an immigrant, I'm the first child of an immigrant ever to hold the office of the Attorney General. And I love to tell families that have come here from all over the world, if your family came to this remarkable country seeking hope and opportunity, there's a good chance your family is a lot like my family. And it's the honor of my life to be your Attorney General. I know as a child of an immigrant that so many of those that are here see education as the pathway and the doorway to the American dream. The idea that in this country, you could chase your dream and you're not going to be denied by your religion, by your race, by who you are. And now what we've seen is that's exactly happening, that for certain people, that door is being closed right in their face. Let me be clear, I support efforts to expand opportunity for all Virginians, but that must be done lawfully. It must be done fairly and through expanded outreach, tutoring, better access to advanced coursework, all of that is legally permissible. But what this board did was pit one race against another, manipulating the system to produce their desired racial makeup, even if it meant hurting one group of students, even if it meant to treat some students purposefully unequal. Both state and federal law are clear. You cannot treat students differently because of their race, even if your intentions are noble, because good intentions do not equal good results. As the United States Supreme Court has ruled, admissions are a zero-sum game. Helping one group by harming another based on race is not lawful in the United States of America. Under the Virginia Human Rights Act and Title VI, basing a decision on race need not be the only reason, just a motivating reason, and here the evidence is absolutely considerable. As Attorney General, I have a duty to enforce the law even-handedly without favoritism, and that includes standing up for every student's right to be treated fairly and equally under the law. I like to say in the Attorney General's office, we're the people's protector. That absolutely means protecting our Asian students. That's why today, I'm referring this matter to the United States Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Justice for further enforcement under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. As the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall once stated, equal means getting the same thing at the same time in the same place. In Virginia and yes, America, we do not uplift one group by tearing another group down. We do not define individuals based on the color of their skin. Asian American students are not a statistic. They are the sons and daughters, neighbors, classmates, and friends. They are Virginians, and they deserve the same protection, dignity, and opportunity as every other Virginian. Let me end with this. I ran for this office to protect the rights of all Virginians, and that includes the right to be judged by your character, your work ethic, and your merit, and not your race. And I will continue to defend that principle with everything this office has. I like to say that tragically in modern America today, we've seen too often that anti-Asian bigotry has been the only state-sanctioned bigotry allowed in America today. That ends. And I will contend to defend the principle with everything this office has that racial discrimination has simply no place in our public institutions. Not in Fairfax, not in Virginia, not in the United States of America. Thank you all, and I want to honor these parents that have been here as well with me through this fight.
The Attorney General is unfortunately not able to stay and take questions. However, I have copies to provide to members of the media, including contact information where you can immediately reach out and get answers to whatever questions you have. Thank you all.